Alright, this video is for the potential disciples, to get it on record. I've been thinking about how I want to do this as far as sharing this art, and I've come up with something that I think is best. As far as right now, there's a physical requirements in order for me to teach somebody the techniques of this art, the physical techniques, the martial art techniques. There's physical requirements that must be met, physical fitness levels. Alright, meaning there's a certain amount of repetitions and certain exercises that must be accomplished in order for people to gain access to the physical technique lessons of this art. Okay, so that's going to be there. There's the intermediate, there's advanced, and then there's elite. Alright, as far as motivating, or basically as far as reaching the minimum, which is the intermediate, the people will have to reach a certain level in order to learn the basic techniques of the art. So there'll be the intermediate level. In order to learn the more advanced techniques, and then later on more of the techniques that are dealing with mainly as far as closer and closer to taking somebody's life, for example, and defending against knives and guns and really serious techniques. That's going to be held more for people who have reached a higher level physically, more the advanced and elite levels of fitness. Alright, so there's going to be the physical fitness aspect that's going to be part of the art that must be accomplished. And then there's going to be a separate aspect, which is mainly just technique, understanding, technique development. Alright, so for example, somebody could start off physically fit, but they could be just a beginner in the techniques. So there's going to be a separate category for that. So basically for everybody that starts off in this art, because they haven't trained in this art, they're all going to be beginners as far as like technique is concerned, but the technique aspect is concerned. But as far as the physical aspect, they could be very advanced. So there could be somebody advanced physically fit, but then beginner in the techniques. Alright, and then there's going to be a third category, which is the spiritual training. Alright, so spiritual training consists of like understanding yourself, lessening the ego, understanding the history behind the martial arts, understanding the meaning behind the yin yang, kung fu, understanding basically the true foundations behind the martial arts. Alright, which is going to take a lot of reading, writing, discovering more about yourself, and eventually creating, basically finding your own inner wisdom and heading towards enlightenment. So that's going to be the spiritual aspect, spiritual training. So there's going to be physical fitness training aspect, and then there's going to be the technique training aspect, and then there's going to be the spiritual aspect. So my goal, is to train people to be well balanced in all three aspects. All right, there's a lot of people that are very advanced in certain aspects and lacking in others, and you see it in all types of martial arts and all types of people that train. I've encountered many people that are very advanced spiritually, have a very strong understanding of the spiritual aspects, but they lack physical training and they lack the technique training. So to me, I wouldn't really consider them martial artists. They might be more of like sages or philosophical students. All right. So, and then there's other people that just are really physically fit. Those are the type of people that you see training, lifting weights at the gym and stuff like that. They do a lot of push-ups, sit-ups, and all that stuff, but they know nothing behind the martial art techniques. So they still wouldn't be martial artists either, because they don't know nothing about technique. They don't know nothing about spiritual training. All they know is the physical. So that's something that they're highly trained in one aspect and they lack in the other two aspects. Then you have other people who train in martial arts where all they do is train technique, and that's all they spend their time on. But they lack physical training. They might be overweight, or they might not have much endurance. They just aren't that fit, but they train in technique a lot, and they've gotten really good at technique. So that's another example of somebody who is lacking in other aspects. And same thing, I wouldn't consider them true martial artists because they're not balanced. I consider a true martial artist someone that's well balanced, physically fit, great technique, advanced technique, and then advanced spiritualness. All right, so that is my goal, is to train people in those three aspects. As far as training people online and stuff like that, the physical fitness aspect must be met first, in order to gain access to the, the technique training. The technique training is designed to basically defend yourself and basically possibly basically it's violence. I mean, you're training somebody to turn the body into a weapon, and that's basically what I take great care in who I teach, that aspect. As far as the spiritual training, the physical philosophy and all that stuff, as you can see, that's all open for anybody to learn because that's very peaceful in nature. But as far as this technique aspect, it's very important that I teach the right people, good people, compassionate people, people that are going to be using it in the right purposes. I take very good caution in training the right people, the technique aspect. All right, but just remember that I do expect people to be balanced out, physically fit, spiritual training, and then this technique training. All right, and then when you do that, then there's going to be more closer representation of, to me, what a true martial artist is. Okay, so as far as being the founder, the creator of this art, Freddy's Modern Kung Fu, the way that I'm going to do it, as far as people are, if there's people that are self-motivated, that's great. If they don't need me to, give them feedback and on their progression as far as their physical progression or the technique progression or their spiritual training progression, that's fine. If they're self-motivated and they want to progress on their own standards, that's fine. But as far as the people that would like, some type of gauge and to see where they're at what level they're at, and what what I consider somebody who is advanced and what I consider somebody that's beyond advanced, and who I consider somebody intermediate, then this is what these type of, I guess in a sense, is almost like a ranking, is what these are for, as far as these standards that I set, to be achieved. And these are the standards that I set, and it kind of gives the people like a gauge of where they're at. All right, and the way that I'm gonna do it is that anybody could train. For example, anybody could come and train with me for a couple of days and say, hey, I learned from this person. But really, that doesn't mean that I authorize or I prove that they've reached a certain level in which to say that they really understand my art. All right. So the way that I'm gonna control it is a way of using YouTube, the website, the channel, to basically state whether or not whoever learns from me is authentic or not. So meaning, if somebody that I'm training has been training with me for like 10 years and they've reached a high level physically, they reached a high level in the technique, and they reached a high level spiritually, then I would state that on my channel, stating that this person by the name of John Smith has reached the black level of elite status of physical fitness, the elite status black level of technique training application, and then the black level elite status of spiritual training. All right, so that that would be stated on the channel. All right, and anybody that claims that they've reached, that they've been trained in this art and they've reached a certain level and they're not on that channel, then they're lying. All right, so that's basically